What if the greatest threat to humanity isn't hatred? Not violence, not greed, but stupidity? Not the funny kind, not memes, not awkward moments, but the quiet, unconscious, soul-draining stupidity that destroys civilizations, ruins lives, and walks around unnoticed. Carl Jung didn't laugh at stupidity. He feared it. Because he saw what most people missed. Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. Let that sink in. Because Jung wasn't just calling people lazy. He was revealing something far more terrifying. Most people are asleep, and they don't know it. You've seen it before. Someone with power makes a decision that destroys hundreds of lives, but they don't feel a thing. Someone repeats the same mistake over and over, but thinks they're evolving. Someone ruins their own child's mind and calls it parenting. And they're not evil. They're not even aware. They're just empty. Following scripts, wearing borrowed opinions, reacting, not thinking, obeying, not understanding. Jung believed stupidity isn't a lack of intelligence. It's a lack of consciousness. And consciousness is hard work. It means self-reflection. It means holding tension. It means not knowing everything. It means watching your own shadow, not just everyone else's. But here's the scary part. The stupid person doesn't know they're stupid. That's what makes it so dangerous. They speak with confidence. They moralize. They simplify complex problems. They become leaders. They gain influence. And worst of all, they think they're the good ones. In Jung's view, the most terrifying form of stupidity is unconscious certainty, the kind that can't listen, the kind that can't learn, the kind that says, I know, I'm right, you're wrong, even when they've never looked in the mirror. Let's be real. You've had moments when you were surrounded by people who were loud, proud, and completely unaware of how blind they were. You've felt the weight of trying to explain something nuanced to someone who can only see in black and white. You've watched ignorance dressed up as virtue, and arrogance mistaken for wisdom. And it probably made you feel like screaming or giving up, because stupidity doesn't debate. It declares. It doesn't examine. It accuses. It doesn't pause. It charges forward. And this, according to Jung, is a psychic disease. He called it mass psychosis, a state where people become so detached from their inner selves that they become puppets. Puppets for media. Puppets for power. Puppets for their own fear. They believe what comforts them. They follow what makes them feel superior. And they reject anything that demands real thought. Jung believed this was at the root of the 20th century's greatest atrocities. Not monsters, not geniuses, ordinary, unconscious people following stupid ideas with full belief. Let me tell you something. nobody wants to admit. You don't need to be dumb to be stupid. A doctor can be stupid. A spiritual guru can be stupid. A CEO, a professor, a philosopher, all capable of deep stupidity. Because stupidity isn't about IQ. It's about ego. When your ego needs to be right, needs to look good, needs to be safe, you become blind. Blind to nuance, blind to complexity, blind to yourself. You think you're informed, but you've never questioned the source. You think you're helping, but you're just playing hero to avoid your own darkness. You think you're better, but you're living in fear. Jung believed the ego creates stupidity to protect itself, because truth is painful and awareness is brutal. Here's how stupidity survives. It hides behind morality. It hides behind ideology. It hides behind spiritual bypassing. It hides behind trends, hashtags, and fake enlightenment. It looks smart. It sounds polished. But it lacks depth. It avoids shadow. And Jung's warning, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Stupidity is the unconscious directing your life, while you think you're in control. Now ask yourself, how much of what you believe is truly yours? How many opinions do you repeat just to feel safe? How many times have you judged instead of thought? How many decisions are made from fear, not wisdom? Because the terrifying truth is, you don't escape stupidity by mocking others. You escape it by facing your own. And that is the hardest thing most people will never do. Carl Jung believed that only deep self-awareness can break the spell. But here's the catch. Awareness feels like death, because it kills everything the ego built to feel safe. Certainty, simplicity, superiority, control. So instead, people stay stupid, because it's easier, safer, more comfortable, until it's too late. You've probably noticed something disturbing. The most intelligent people hesitate. They second-guess themselves. They reflect. They pause before speaking. But the most ignorant, they shout. They declare. They act like they've figured out life itself. They're certain about everything. That's not just frustrating. It's dangerous. And Carl Jung knew exactly why it happens. The more unconscious a person is, the more certain they feel. Because certainty is not a sign of wisdom. It's a defense mechanism. Let's break it down. Conscious people carry the weight of complexity. They know that truth is layered, that every story has another side, that every answer comes with more questions. So they speak carefully. They doubt their own instincts. They stay open, even when it hurts. But unconscious people, they've never done the work. They've never sat in discomfort. They've never looked in the mirror and said, I might be wrong. So they cling to certainty, not because they're wise, but because they're terrified. And that fear, it hides behind arrogance. Think about that friend who always has an opinion about everything. even topics they've never studied, even experiences they've never lived. And you wonder, how are they so sure? How can they be so loud? How can they be so wrong? It's because stupidity needs to feel strong. So it uses confidence as camouflage. And the world rewards it. The loudest person in the room gets the attention. The most aggressive gets the power. The one who pretends to know becomes the leader, even if everything they say is hollow. Carl Jung saw this clearly during his time. He watched entire nations fall into madness, led by people who were completely unconscious, but extremely persuasive. And he realized people don't follow truth. They follow confidence, even if that confidence is fake, because truth is heavy. It's complicated. It requires inner work. But confidence feels good. It feels safe. It feels like leadership. And that's how stupidity rises. Here's the terrifying part. Stupidity feels like truth. If you don't know yourself, because the unconscious mind is desperate for simplicity. It wants good versus evil. It wants us versus them. It wants, I'm right, they're wrong. That's easier than sitting with real ambiguity. It's easier than accepting you might be part of the problem. It's easier than realizing your pain made you blind. It's easier than unpacking your trauma. So people cling to bold ideas, loud speakers, simple narratives, and stupidity becomes seductive. Let me tell you a real story. In a quiet university town, a philosophy professor began gaining attention online. Not because he was wise, not because he was deep, but because he was old. He spoke in absolutes. He made everything sound black and white. He said things like, all modern problems come from weak minds. Healing is a lie. You just need discipline. Feelings are for losers. And people ate it up. They didn't notice he never cited real research. They didn't notice he never admitted doubt. They didn't notice his views came from rage, not reason, because he was confident. And in this world, confidence is more addictive than truth. Jung would call this a shadow eruption. The man wasn't a thinker. He was a wounded boy, using intellect to dominate, projecting his own insecurities onto others, confusing cruelty with strength. And the crowd followed, not because he was right, but because they were unconscious too. Their own wounds resonated with his. That's how mass stupidity works. It's not just one person. It's a collective denial, a shared unconsciousness, a refusal to think deeper, because thinking hurts. Jung once said, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. The confident fool is often possessed by ideology, fear, ego, unresolved trauma. And instead of healing, they spread it. They infect others with their certainty. They become a symbol, not of truth, but of comfort. And that's when things get dangerous. Because when stupidity becomes viral, it's no longer a personal problem. It's a societal disease. So what can you do? Jung's answer was brutally honest. You can't change the world. You can only become conscious, because consciousness is contagious too. When you pause before reacting, when you say, "I don't know," when you explore instead of preach, you give others permission to do the same. You break the illusion of certainty. You challenge the mask. You model a different kind of power, the kind rooted in awareness, not arrogance. And slowly, stupidity loses its grip. But it's not easy. You'll be underestimated. You'll be misunderstood. You'll watch others rise with fake wisdom while you stay humble. But remember, wisdom whispers. Stupidity screams. And Jung knew. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more light. We think of evil as intentional, cold, calculated, cruel. But Carl Jung offered a terrifying insight. The greatest danger to mankind is not the conscious villain, but the unconscious fool. Because the most destructive people in history weren't monsters. They were stupid. Not in the way we mock, but in the way we ignore. They lacked inner awareness. They didn't understand their own darkness. They were possessed by fear, by ideology, by shadow. And they had no idea. That's the terrifying part. You expect evil to come with fangs, to be loud, to wear a costume. But real evil doesn't know it's evil. It believes it's doing good. It thinks it's saving people, protecting tradition, fighting corruption, preserving peace. And Jung warned, this is what makes stupidity so dangerous. Not its ignorance, but its conviction. A stupid person can't see the shadow, not in themselves, not in others, not in systems. They think pain equals weakness, anger equals power, suffering equals punishment, and morality equals following rules. They follow orders, repeat slogans, point fingers, and they never stop to ask, where is this coming from inside me? Because that question would unravel everything. Let's make it real. Imagine a teacher, respected, polite, good reputation. But at home, she humiliates her child for crying. She says things like, "Stop acting weak. You're being dramatic. People don't care about your feelings." She's not a monster. She's not cruel for pleasure. She truly believes she's raising her child to be strong. But here's the horror. She's repeating her own trauma, her own suppressed wounds, her own shame, disguised as discipline. And she'll never know, because she never asked. Jung called this moral stupidity. When people follow rules or roles, but never confront their soul, they become moral machines, judging others, policing emotion, enforcing normalcy. But inside, they're emotionally blind. And blind people with power are lethal. Here's what Jung discovered. When someone is disconnected from their own darkness, they project it outward. That's when people start seeing bad guys everywhere. They think evil is out there, in the poor, in the different, in the sick, in the angry. They externalize the enemy, and they justify cruelty. That's how wars begin. That's how genocide happens. That's how neighbors turn into monsters. Not because they're evil, but because they're stupid. Spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. They never faced their own pain, so they turn it into righteousness. And here's the twist. Evil often wears a smile. It's polite, it's orderly, it's well-dressed, it uses nice language. But if it lacks inner awareness, it's still dangerous. Jung said it best. A man who is unconscious of himself acts in a blind, instinctual way, and is in addition fooled by all illusions that arise from his unconscious. In other words, if you don't know your own darkness, you will serve it, and you'll think you're doing something noble. Let me ask you a hard question. Have you ever hurt someone, but believed you were helping? Ever pushed someone away because they needed it? Ever judged someone's trauma because it looked weak or messy? That wasn't you being evil. That was unconsciousness. That was inherited thinking. That was your shadow speaking. And the more we deny it, the more it grows. Jung believed every human carries both light and darkness. We're not good people. We're complex creatures. The problem is when we pretend otherwise, when we act like we're healed, moral, wise, correct. But inside, we're fragmented, scared, unexamined. That's when stupidity becomes evil. Because we're doing harm, but calling it help. We're repeating patterns, but calling it tradition. We're avoiding truth, but calling it faith. So what's the cure? Self-awareness, shadow work, silence, the willingness to feel everything you've avoided. Because until you do, you'll act from a place you don't understand, and you'll destroy things you claim to love. You won't see yourself as the villain. You'll see yourself as the victim, as the hero, as the one who tried. But Jung knew this is exactly how unconscious evil survives. It never sees itself. It never apologizes. It never stops. Until something shatters the illusion. Usually, pain, loss, failure. Only then does the ego crack, and real awareness begins. That's why Jung's work wasn't about feeling good. It was about becoming whole. Even if it hurts, even if you lose people, even if it changes everything. Because it's better to lose your identity than to live your whole life asleep. You've made it this far, so you're not like them. But that doesn't mean you're safe. Because stupidity, real stupidity, is not a lack of knowledge. It's a slow decay of awareness. And it happens to the smartest people too. Every time you avoid discomfort, every time you outsource your thinking, every time you react without reflection, you're already slipping. That's what Carl Jung feared the most. Not the fools who scream, but the aware ones who slowly fall asleep. So the question is, how do you stay awake? Step 1. Make the unconscious conscious. It sounds simple, but it means war with your comfort zone. You'll have to look at yourself without flinching. Not just your pain, but your patterns. Not just what hurt you, but what you became because of it. It means seeing how your ego manipulates reality, how it seeks validation, how it hides behind intelligence or kindness or success. Because the ego doesn't want truth. It wants control. And if you don't challenge it daily, you'll become the very thing you swore to never be. Step 2. Learn to pause before reacting. Every time you feel the urge to comment, criticize, or correct, pause. Ask, what am I protecting? What fear is hiding behind this anger? Am I actually listening, or just preparing my defense? Because stupid people react. Wise people observe. And the space between feeling and reaction, that's where your power is. Jung believed this space is sacred. It's where consciousness is born. Step 3. Embrace complexity. You will never have all the answers. And that's not weakness. It's wisdom. Let yourself say, I don't know. Let me think about that. Maybe both sides have a point. I was wrong. These aren't signs of failure. They're proof you're evolving. The most dangerous minds are the ones who think they've figured everything out. The most liberated ones are still learning. Step 4. Stay close to your pain. Stupidity thrives on repression. But healing begins where pain lives. Feel your grief. Own your shame. Sit with your regrets. Not to drown in them, but to integrate them. Your pain isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's the part of you that never lied, that never sold out, that still remembers what's real. And when you listen, you stop projecting. You stop blaming. You stop repeating. Step 5. Surround yourself with mirrors, not cheerleaders. You don't need people who always agree. You need people who reflect you, challenge you, catch you when you fall into ego. Even Carl Jung said, until you face your shadow, you will keep meeting it in the world. Your friends are either exposing your shadow or enabling it. Choose wisely, because one unconscious friend can cost you years of growth. Now let's get brutally honest. Have you ever mocked someone just to feel smarter? Have you ever avoided admitting you're wrong because it made you feel small? Have you ever followed a belief just because it felt safer than uncertainty? We all have. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. But the difference between you and them is that you're willing to see it. That's where change begins. So here's the truth. You will be stupid sometimes. You will forget. You will fall into ego. You will hurt people without meaning to. But you can always come back to stillness, to self-honesty, to consciousness, not by knowing more, not by preaching louder, but by listening, feeling, undoing. The path is not to become better than others, but to become real with yourself. That's what Jung fought for. Not superiority, not control, but wholeness. Because the greatest rebellion in a stupid world is awareness. And you don't need a stage, a platform, or applause. You just need one moment of clarity, one quiet decision to wake up, and everything begins to shift. If this video brought something to the surface, here's your challenge. Go to the comments and answer this. What's the one unconscious behavior you're ready to face in yourself? Let's make this not just another video. Let's make it a mirror. Subscribe to Psychatic for more. Carl Jung, emotional depth and real self-exploration. And if this helped you, drop a super thanks. It keeps the depth alive.